Pariyatti Audiobooks presents The Jewel in Mumbai by Bikram Dandiya, narrated by the author. Preamble. I was first encouraged to document the creation of the crystal bud at the Global Vipassana Pagoda by Khandarji, the center teacher of Dhammapatan Vipassana Center, located in the Global Vipassana Pagoda premises. There had been a recurring curiosity about this subject amongst his students and visitors, and I mailed him an essay on it several years back. Then, quite recently, I visited the Global Vipassana Pagoda again after a gap of over 5 years to attend a workshop on the Bhikkhu Vinaya. On the last day of my stay, some young servers discovered that I had a part to play in the creation of the crystal bud. And this initiated excited interest and curiosity on the subject. I left early next morning with the determination to document relevant information and photos for posterity, which I have attempted to do in this little book. While documenting, I've tried to bring alive the small miracles that occurred during this journey. I hope the reader finds them inspiring. At this same workshop, Sri Manjappaji, the main speaker, was asked to shed light on the relevance of mounting crystals on top of pagodas. He explained it as follows. The base of the pagoda, which is big and broad, represents Sila. The rings near the summit represent Samadhi, and the crystal on top represents Nibbana. In the over 15 years since I worked with this crystal bud for the Global Vipassana Pagoda, this is the best explanation about their relevance that I've heard. All along the process of making this crystal bud, my thankfulness towards Guruji for having allowed me this rare opportunity kept competing with the sheer excitement of actually doing the job. Reflecting back, I only feel immense gratitude and a wonderful feeling of satisfaction thanks to this one great man. The story. The story of the Global Vipassana Pagoda crystal began around the winter of 2001 when Bob Jeffs of Canada and I had taken on the task of fixing the light underneath the crystal that crowns the Dhammagiri Pagoda. Guruji had apparently told Premji Savla that this would make the Devis and Devtas here very happy. Meanwhile, at Mumbai, work on the Global Vipassana Pagoda had started. It occurred to me that there would be a need for a crystal there at some point in time, as all the pagodas I had seen were capped by a crystal. Being a jeweler, on my next visit to Jaipur, out of curiosity, I asked a rough gem broker where the best crystal would be found. I was informed that a Jaipur dealer had a very good specimen at his Brazil warehouse, but we would have to visit Brazil to see it, while the price quoted was more than what I could afford. During my next visit to Dhammagiri, I mustered up the courage to address Guruji and Mataji during one of their evening walks. They didn't know me then, and belying the price being demanded for the crystal, a strange courage prompted me to seek their permission to provide the crystal for the Global Vipassana Pagoda. Guruji paused for a few moments, looked at me keenly, and asked if I could arrange for the money, to which I said yes. When I inquired from Guruji how big the crystal would need to be, following a moment of reflection, he replied that it should be about 2.5 feet, to which I said okay, and with a supportive blessing from Mataji, I withdrew with folded hands. When back in Jaipur in April 2002, I excitedly called the broker, Omji, to make further inquiries about the Brazilian crystal. To my delight, I was informed that we no longer needed to visit Brazil as the crystal had been brought to Jaipur for sale. And because no good offers had been forthcoming, the price had been halved. This was very encouraging. So we arranged an appointment to visit the owner, who I was yet to meet. I also requested Abhi Mia, an expert gemstone carver who I had previously worked with, to come along and give his expert opinion on the quality of the piece, as rough gemstones can be very deceptive to the untrained eye. As we entered the dealer's residence-cum-office compound, Abhi Mia noticed a large, rough, whitish stone parked unpretentiously on the lawn outside near a plant pot. It looked very weather-worn and modest. Abhi remarked, "I think this is the piece, and if so, it is good." Looking at the piece, it was hard to be convinced, but then Abhi was the expert. As we entered the dealer's office, I saw Bipin Jhalani, a classmate of mine from school, who, as it turned out, was the owner. In this new atmosphere of familiar conviviality, when I told Bipin where the crystal was destined for, he was happy to sell the rough crystal at a quarter of the original asking price, an amount I could afford. I was overjoyed, and in spite of my limited resources, the project could move forward. How it is when we have a Dhamma volition, all the positive forces come in support to make the unexpected happen. Meanwhile, Abhi Mia had gathered a small pile of rough tourmaline gemstones, winked at me suggesting that we buy that pile of stones as well, and with a poker-faced demeanor concealing his enthusiasm from Bipin, settled a price with him. I was hesitant at paying out any more money, however little, and especially for these unconvincing stones, but was admonished by a sharp look from Abhi. He also found a moment to whisper in my ear that he would buy them all from me and I should really keep some for myself, while one big black one was specially for him. Okay, as it turned out, the profit from this inconsequentially priced small collection of rough gemstones was to reimburse the entire cost of the pagoda crystal with much more money left over. People usually press me to please tell us the cost of the crystal, and my answer with a smile is always and truthfully nothing. Here is a very tangible demonstration of Guruji's advice to us. When we give dana, we are deprived of nothing. We brought home our bounty, and Abhi appeared next morning to pick up the black piece, which against the sun revealed itself to be a deep, desirable red. A tiny piece of this rough red tourmaline, which I pressed upon Abhi to return to me, has recently served as a sample piece for my daughter Kichu's gem cutting initiation. We were startled by the quality of the finished piece and its current market valuation. Omji and I took the big crystal rough to a local granite cutting workshop in order to have it shaped, as he didn't have the large machinery required. Soon after we began slicing off an extra surface layer, Omji, who is normally a very calm person, got visibly excited. He could detect how clean and white the interior of the crystal really was. Later, I was offered a sizable sum of money for this extra layer, almost matching the full cost of the 200 kilogram stone itself. I preferred instead to keep it. It was later carved with the scene of the Tathagat at Isipatan, instructing his 55 disciples to go in all directions. I was hoping to present this carving to Guruji, but as it took several years to finish and came together too late, this could not happen. The original crystal for the pagoda stone was initially shaped at my house by one of Omji's craftsmen, which itself was a minor miracle, as such craftsmen are very hard to come by and therefore very carefully protected by their employers. Once shaped, we presented Guruji with a drawing of how we visualized the surface carving to look. This was an untraditional design from the Burmese perspective, and Guruji sent the drawing to Burma for approval. Alexis Gomez from Venezuela, then living at Dhamagiri, had rendered the design on paper for us. The new design has now become the new standard for all crystals going up at Vipassana pagodas in India and abroad, and is also being appreciated by traditional monasteries such as the famous Na Uyana monastery in Sri Lanka, where one such piece adorns their pagoda. Once the design was approved by Guruji's Burmese advisors, the piece went to Omji's own workshop to be finished off and polished, and our finished crystal emerged to be 30 inches tall, quite miraculously complying with Guruji's specifications. Next came the question of its transportation to Mumbai. Ramnath Chinoy, who lived in Mumbai, was my colleague in this leg of the exercise. On his own initiative, he negotiated a deal with an airline to air freight it, while I was exploring train and road options, preferring not to let the piece out of sight as far as possible. One evening, out of the blue, I received a call from Ramnath saying that he was to visit Jaipur the very next morning on an emergency visit to his head office, which coincidentally happened to be in Jaipur. He arrived at my house straight from the airport, but before he could visit his office, he received a call cancelling his emergency meeting. So here he was in Jaipur and at the disposal of the crystal, and we had the day to pursue our objective of getting the crystal to Mumbai. The airline declined to take the crystal up on short notice, and later that evening, we were at the railway station trying to book the crystal as unattended baggage, packed now in a strong wooden box upholstered in blue velvet, on the train. But they wouldn't have it, as the crystal weighed 80 kilos, exceeding their maximum limit by 10 kilograms. Then a very strange thing happened. As travelers on the route know, there is only a negligible chance of getting a last-minute passenger reservation on a Jaipur-Mumbai train. But as we were at the station, we inquired. To our surprise, the clerk issued us a confirmed ticket on the spot. Exuberant, we proceeded to the coach, debating how we would place the crystal. We would not like to keep it on the floor, and it would be too obtrusive on the berth, potentially inviting objections from fellow passengers. As we entered the coach, there was a strange silence inside. It soon dawned on us that we were the only people on this air-conditioned coach of 70 berths. This coach had been added to the train at the last minute, and Ramnath travelled all alone in it to Mumbai, with the Brahmin ticket inspector keeping him company and thanking him for the opportunity of being able to pray near the crystal through the night. Our next big surprise came at the inauguration of the pagoda, when the crystal was to be mounted right on top at a date and time prescribed by Guruji's Burmese contacts. This was a big event for which the President of India, our chief guest, was being flown in, and the date and time were parallel with our arrival on the site. However, it was decided locally that in view of this momentous event, the crystal would go up the evening before the appointed date. Attempts were made to do so, but they failed. The crystal went up to the top of the pagoda, but could not be mounted for one reason or another. Early next morning, we tried to continue with our task, but again our attempts failed. The crystal went up only as the President's helicopter landed on the clearing made for it nearby, at the exact time designated for its mounting by our Burmese advisors. Nayan Bhai Shah and I, having placed the crystal on its mount, came down to the inner pagoda exhilarated, just as the formal inaugural proceedings commenced. Here I joined my father, who had arrived from Jaipur to attend the event. This is the story of a small jeweler's volition to put up this big crystal 325 feet high up on the Mumbai skyline over the largest pagoda to be built in recent years. On a certain occasion during these events, even Guruji expressed his pleasant surprise on this opportunity that I had received, albeit through his good office. My take on these events is this crystal was to reach the top of the pagoda regardless of my Dhamma volition and efforts. I became one amongst the many instruments for the progression of this event. Having done so, the inexplicable small miracles that facilitated this event strengthened my Shraddha, my devotion, further, while I was fortunate to earn merits of dana in the process. Remembering this good fortune that came my way, I share whatever merits earned with those who made this possible, starting with Guruji and Mataji and all the chain of teachers not yet liberated, with my parents and ancestors, and with all those that helped me fulfill this task in whichever way, with you all that have read or heard through this story, with my daughter, relatives, and friends, and with all beings. The extra layer of crystal that was removed from the original piece, which went on top of the pagoda, was later carved into this historical scene. The Buddha at Isipatan, Sarnath, instructing his 55 disciples to go in all directions to teach the Dhamma. Bhajan Hitai, Bhajan Sukhai, Lokanu Kampai. For the good of many, for the well-being of many, out of compassion for the world. It doesn't end there. In August 2020, as the first edition of this booklet was going into print, I delivered the remaining pieces of the rough green tourmaline pile for a clearance sale to Abhimia. These were the remnants of what he had so propitiously nudged me into buying. He now surprised me by making an amazing offer for the waste pieces of the over 200 kilogram crystal that was reduced to the 80 kilogram global Vipassana pagoda bud. These ranged from tiny shards to some larger pieces of up to 12 inches in length. These waste pieces had been lying safely in a strong room ever since 2005, although they constituted no commercial value at that time. However, I had held on to them on a hunch. I even commissioned some beads from them, which were subsequently strung into 2 necklaces finished off in gold. These were made with the intent of offering them to Guruji, who I imagine might want to present them to appropriate dignitaries at the time of the inauguration of the global Vipassana pagoda. However, these were not given to anyone on Guruji's admonishment. Sadly for Abhi, I turned his 2020 offer down. He has since repeated this offer twice, the second one being as recently as in 2022. I am now looking out for the construction of a sacred structure such as a pagoda, conveniently close by to Jaipur, into which I can enshrine these remnants. It's really fascinating how the results of a happily made dana are so multi-dimensional that even the ordinary becomes extraordinary and even the valueless becomes invaluable. What is a crystal? Crystal is a term applying to a wide variety of solids, natural or man-made. For our purpose, it refers to a clean white natural quartz, colloquially called rock crystal. The chemical structure of quartz is silicon and oxygen atoms arranged in a highly ordered repeating pattern in the SiO4 formula. A rock crystal is multifaceted and tapers to a point at the top. They are mostly opaque at the base, getting progressively clear as they go up. Good-sized natural rock crystals can take millions of years to form. Rock crystals are found in many parts of the world. However, most are of little value or use, as they can be tiny, opaque, discolored, and not hard enough to take a good polish. Even for a small pagoda butt, a suitable rock crystal would ideally be about 10 kilos in weight, a foot in length, white, hard, and clear. The so-called crystal clear. The enhancement of the above 5 factors make a crystal progressively rarer. To draw an analogy, human beings are found the world over, but to find a human being that observes the 5 sila in their purity is rare. The crystal used for the bud topping the global Vipassana pagoda is indeed such a rare crystal. A comparable crystal has yet to be traced. Once procured, a crystal is carved into a bud-like shape. Thereafter, the bud is ground down progressively to a very smooth and transparent glass-like finish. The removal of the excess material from the surface by carving could be compared to the removal of the 5 nivaranas in the development of samadhi. The progressive grinding down leading to the final polish can be looked upon as a progressive development of panya leading to the supreme fruit of nibbana. A lot of esoteric and other worldly properties are associated with rock crystals, making them valuable from time immemorial. Relics of the Buddhas have often been found preserved in crystal caskets. Burmese and Sri Lankan pagodas have traditionally been topped by them. Plenty of facts support their desirability in other realms as well. Kings and queens have eaten and drunk from rock crystal receptacles and have worn crowns adorned by them. Furthermore, many religious traditions have used crystals in representing their deities and sacred artifacts.
This has been The Jewel in Mumbai by Bikram Dandiya, narrated by the author. Copyright 2023 Bikram Dandiya. Audio production copyright 2024 Pariyatti.
Pariyatti, a non-profit 501c3 organization, offers a wide variety of books, eBooks, videos, and audiobooks about the teachings of the Buddha, the Pāli language, and Vipassana meditation. Browse our complete catalog at www.pariyatti.org.